A very good morning and a warm welcome to the CNBC Africa Special, where we're coming to you live from the Moses Mabhida Stadium in the city of Durban, or as they say in the local language here, Sanbonani, mina ngikugugulethu wakamfuphi. Well, I must say that we are at the 26th Annual Tourism Indaba, currently being held here in the city of Durban, a city which is uniquely located along the coastline of the Indian Ocean. It's home to one of the busiest harbors on the continent, managing to service trade between the continent as well as the east of the globe. While today we'll be unpacking Durban's potential to become a global city with regards to infrastructure development as well as increased trade between regions, and also some interesting developments regarding tourism in the country and economic development. All of that and so much more is coming up in the next hour, but we invite you to take part in this conversation together with our studio audience, or rather Moses Mabhida audience here in the presidential suite, and use the hashtag on Twitter. That's hashtag Durban Experience. Durban Experience, that's experience without an E. But to get this conversation going, let me introduce my well-esteemed guest. To my left, we've got Andre Potas. He's a partner regarding corporate finance advisory leader and infrastructure and capital projects at an organization here in South Africa. We've also got to the center there, the city manager of Durban, that's Mr. Sibusitole. Towards the end there, the rose amongst the thorns regarding this panel discussion, that's Mamadzi Ramawela, CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. And at the end, the hotelier himself, the chief executive of Tsogosan, that's Marcel Van Olok. Lady and gents, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will kick off this discussion, but perhaps to get your thoughts running and to get those juices flowing, let's take a look at this insert where we spoke to the mayor of KZN a short while ago, or rather last year, with regard to the potential that Durban has and what it has to offer.
Durban tourism has been growing for the past 10 years, particularly from 2001. Looking at the number of tourists that are coming to Durban, particularly those coming from overseas and domestic tourists. For this year alone, for the end of 2012, we had about 4 million tourists combined coming to Durban, which is a sign that the tourism industry is growing. For us, I think it is in terms of our facilities that we have, it is in terms of our hospitality industry that we have in Durban, and again that it is because of the warmth of our people and the weather. I think it does actually contribute to the growth of tourism in the municipality of eThekwini and the city of Durban.
Well, that was James Ngumalo, the mayor of Durban, telling us what Durban has to offer. And maybe someone who can add a voice to that is Mr. Sibusitole, the city manager of Durban. This is a fantastic city, no doubt, known for its subtropical weather coming, or rather, to the country, which makes it a great destination for tourism. But from your perspective, is Durban capitalizing on these opportunities?
Yes, I believe that as Durban, we are indeed capitalizing on the opportunities that exist, as well as the competitive position that Durban finds itself. That's why recently we have adopted a new strategy, taking Durban to the world, through which we hope to increase the number of tourists to about 5 million by 2020. That means in the next 7 years, we hope to increase to 5 million, which will also increase the tourism spend from the current levels of about 5.7 to 10 billion. That would also consequently also contribute to increases in terms of the number of people who are employed within the industry, but also to grow the skill sets within the tourism industry as a whole.
Andre, well, I'd like to come to you, Andre Potas from Deloitte. Why is Durban perhaps best positioned to achieve those numbers quoted by Sibusitole?
I think Durban is known as South Africa's or Africa's playground. The weather is certainly a huge factor for that. The warm seas. We've got fantastic transport links, particularly with the new airport. What we need to do is put in place more regional flights and more international flights for that. But certainly from what Durban has to offer in terms of facilities and in terms of an offering, I think we are well placed. What we do need to remember is we are a long-haul destination at the southern tip of Africa, and therefore we have to be significantly better and significantly cheaper to encourage people to spend that extra time on the aeroplane. But there's no reason we can't do that.
Significantly better, significantly cheaper. Mamati, to bring you into this conversation, are we achieving that at the moment, being better and cheaper?
I think if you look at Durban and where we sit, I think, for years, Durban has always been, South Africa's playground. And as the city manager is saying, what needs to be done is to take Durban to the rest of the continent and the rest of the world. But I think a lot of us spend a lot of time trying to appeal or put the South African product, or even Durban for that matter, to the international community. We have Africa on our doorstep. We have Africa that is growing. 7 of the fastest emerging countries in the world are in Africa. And those are the people that have got the disposable income. They're looking for places to spend that money. And, with all the qualities that Durban has, why shouldn't they be coming here? And I agree with what Andre is saying. Let's get the flights here. Let's worry about the regional flights first, so that we get our own very people who are right on our doorstep to come here and keep us going. And the rest of the world will get to know the secret that Durban is the place for them to come and have a fantastic holiday. We were just talking with Marcel that this is a great city to also live in. And that's what Durban needs to capitalize on. Let's get the infrastructure right. Let's get our people understanding that tourism needs to be supported, so that when people come here, they now know that of all the places that they can go in the world, Durban is a place for them to come and have a fantastic holiday and to live here.
One of those fantastic places needs a lot of infrastructure. Marcel, that's where you come in from an accommodation perspective regarding Sohosan. 220 million rand that you're investing into the upgrading of the beach promenade as well as the Marani and Elangeni hotels. That's a lot of money. Why do you believe in this hub that is Durban versus other places like Cape Town?
I mean, the 200 million on Elangeni is pretty small compared to the rest of the money we're putting into the beachfront. We've got another 1.8 billion going into the casino development at the end. And the thing that gives us faith in Durban is, I guess, twofold. We've seen a strong investment in the city infrastructure by the city in the first place. So they've fixed their own infrastructure, which allows us to follow. And there's been a definite opening or enabling environment that's come through in the city under Sabu and Dr. Moyo, where there is a willingness to create an environment that makes investment easier. And as soon as that opens, money flows. People look for those opportunities. The natural attractions of Durban we all know. So the weather's good, the beach looks good, people want to be here. It's got a great airport. It's also easy driving distance from your mass South African market being Gauteng. So it's got all those natural advantages, but the big change has been the enabling environment that the city's put in place, and that allows us to follow. And that's what we're doing.
Brings up the importance of public-private partnerships. So for the city, quite clearly there's advantages to working with someone like Marcel.
Yeah, I think one of the conditions for success that we have already identified, apart from broader city leadership in terms of what we want to do to reposition ourselves, is really capitalizing or building on partnerships with the private sector, but also with other spheres of government, because we believe that the interplay or interconnection between the different plans that arise from there and then integrating them into one plan is what will make us to be a winning city. And we have a number of private sector initiatives apart from Sohosan that have already been lined up as part of investment in terms of our tourism plant, whether it's in the point development or around the airport itself through the Durban Trade Port. But the entire corridor in the north is ready for development, especially that will enhance tourism. But we also look at partnerships with bodies like the port authorities, where we are envisaging investment in terms of the new port at the old Durban airport site, which is going to be more than 150 billions worth of investments within eThekwini. That we believe is not just going to be a port, that will promote industrial development, but we want it to be a port that can also add on our tourism plan, so that we also create advanced factors for tourism within the eThekwini, especially the maritime industry. The creation of a cruise liner product is going to also help in terms of taking us into a new pedestal altogether.
It does seem as though it is a multi-pronged approach, and a multi-pronged approach that we'd like to use in this discussion is getting our audiences new at home more involved with this discussion. So tweet us at CNBC Africa or at Gukumfupi and use the hashtag hashtag Durban Experience. That's Durban Experience, experience without an E. I see our audience is keeping their hands on their laps. Not many Twitterers out here, but maybe we will get that going in a moment or two. To come to you, Mamatsi, for a moment here, it does seem as though this multi-pronged approach needs to work on local economic development as well as exporting the brand that is Durban to the rest of the globe and maybe even the African continent. How much further are we from achieving that goal?
Well, I think taking the Durban brand and all that Durban has to offer to the continent and to the rest of the world, I think it has to be done within the context of Brand South Africa, so that we are not seen to be competing with each other, especially on the international scene. But I think on the positive side, for me, one of the things that really encourages me and it gives me a lot of confidence in Durban is the fighting spirit that all the local role players have here. They don't give up. If you have a look at the development taking place, of the airport itself, and if you have a look at what the city is doing on the beachfront, really, listening to what the trade has been saying, that, your very #1 product in the city of Durban, which is the Golden Mile, needed some attention. The city went in and really put a lot of investment in that. And you can see that the trade is now beginning to come in, as Marcel was saying, to be able to take on the challenge of making sure that Durban's product gets improved so that, we stand firmly. You mentioned Cape Town earlier on. That's who Durban competes with within the South African context. So the mass market of Gauteng, when they think of going on holiday, it's, am I going to Durban? Am I going to Cape Town? So I think it's encouraging to see what Durban has been doing to say, this is what we are about, and the domestic tourist is a people we're focusing on. And as I say, Durban has a very good name, regionally as well, and people of Botswana, when they think about going for a beach experience, Durban is a place for them to come. Harare, you look at people out in the DR Congo, it's been fantastic listening to some of them at the Indaba now, talking about the city and how beautiful it is, and the perceptions that have been corrected since they've arrived into the city. So it's really just to keep on what Durban is doing at the moment, just keep on putting Durban out there, the positive messages about Durban within the context of Brand South Africa.
Indeed, because we all know that South Africa contributes at least 15% to the world's population, but we only receive 3% of the world's population with regard to tourism. But perhaps it's time now for us to take a look at some of the major events that the city of Durban has managed to host in the last couple of years. BRICS Summit, COP17, and naturally Tourism Indaba. But let's take a look at this feature.
Durban has performed exceptionally well in the business event arena. The facility that we're currently sitting in, the Durban ICC and Durban Exhibition Centre, has been rated as one of the top 20 facilities of its kind in the world.
It's world class. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the quality of accommodation and the infrastructure that exists in this city to be able to host major events, the international leisure traveller, international corporate traveller, big meetings, big conventions that the city has proven over and over that it's capable of hosting.
The increase of 16% to the city, it's something that that we've been able to achieve because of various interventions that we've come up with in the last 5 years. For example, around the issue of the infrastructure that has been provided and the events that we have hosted in the last 5 years. If you look at the World Cup, the spin-off from the World Cup is that 2 years down the line, then people are now coming, they are now starting to come to South Africa and the city of Durban. You also look at the big events that we have hosted in the past. COP17 is one of them. Latest one was BRICS early this year. All of these events put together, they help to project the city of Durban is a city that is capable of hosting major events, but at the same time as a city that is has the required infrastructure.
City capable of hosting international events. Andre, your perspective on this? Quite clearly, reputation is also something that's necessary to take care of here, instead of just infrastructural development. The reputation of Durban, if you take a look at the international landscape?
I think if we look at Durban and just wider as well, Durban sits at the centre of the KZN coast, but both the north and south coast provide excellent tourism opportunities as well. And in fact, the north coast are some of the fastest growing municipalities in the country. But I think certainly for reputation, those mega events go a long way towards contributing to that. As we say, when people initially look at South Africa, they look at Johannesburg, Cape Town, and it's events like the World Cup semi-finals, which we hosted here, African Cup of Nations, Games, BRICS Summit, COP, that bring international tourists that might not otherwise have seen the city to Durban, and I think they go back and they tell their families, and we know of a number of people who've come out for events and then come back down the line for holidays. I think Durban as well, we look at the coast, but we've got fantastic game parks just 3 hours north. We've got the Drakensberg just 2 hours inland. So a fantastic package which Durban can offer. And certainly the reputation amongst those who have visited it is a bit of an undiscovered jewel, and one does hear that it takes people by surprise. So probably a bit of work to do around that marketing of the brand globally.
Spoo, to come back to you, have there been challenges with regard to cleaning up the city and bringing in more investment appeal? Surely there must have been some speed humps that you've met along the way?
Yeah, I think there are factors that we have identified as sort of inhibitors in terms of our plans, particularly issues of crime and grime. And I think I'm glad to mention that there are a number of strides that have been made in that front through the Clean My City campaign, which is spearheaded by the mayor and myself, where we want to make sure that we have a well-maintained city that takes care of its citizens and its visitors, both from the point of cleanliness, but also from the point of view of the assurance that when they are in Durban, they are safe, and well looked after by the citizens. So I think that's really one of the major issues that we're addressing at the moment. That means adding more police on the ground in terms of metropolis, but also using private sector resources to augment our capacity, especially in areas that we have identified as strategic for tourism. We are now introducing the concept of urban management zones, where we are investing and putting more resources in order to make sure that in those zones there's maximum cleanliness and maximum safety.
Is there an example of one of those zones that you can give us?
One of the zones is around the ICC environs, as well as around the beachfront promenade. And I think that's where really we've invested a lot of resources. We are using technology as well to augment whatever human capabilities that exist within the city. We have multiplied the number of CCTV cameras, and we hope to expand that also within the townships, because we also view townships like Umlazi, Gomashu, Claremont as some of the areas where there's a potential for township tourism, but also to exhibit the kind of lifestyles that the city has, so that people, when they come to visit, they're not just attracted around the beachfront and the stadium where we are, but they can look into other cultural and historic sort of perspectives about what Durban has to offer. Because I think for younger tourists in particular, that's an area that is unexplored in Durban.
Indeed, one that many people might be looking forward to get a feel for the Kasi experience. But we'd like you once again to get your questions going. Tweet us at CNBC Africa using the hashtag Durban Experience, that experience without an E. Well, we'd like to get some questions from the floor. From the moment, if there is anyone with a question, kindly raise your hand, wait for the microphone to come to you, and stand up, introduce yourself, and you can fire with your questions. Any questions on the floor for the moment? The gentleman over there.
Morning. My name is Andrew Lehman. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and I'd like to draw attention to the Durban Fun Season. I do this for two reasons. Firstly, because it was an initiative of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Tourism Committee, and the intention of that was to extend the holiday season. As the country's premier domestic tourism city, we were very conscious of the fact that we had this very high season during periods when school children were off school, and not a great deal outside of that. And we felt it was necessary to extend that to start earlier in the year to take advantage of the wonderful weather that Durban has from April onwards. The second important thing about the Durban Fun Season is that it's a very successful public-private partnership between the Chamber and also Durban Tourism. And from the Chamber's point of view, we are very grateful indeed for the help we've had from Durban Tourism. The person who's responsible for putting together the Durban Fun Season program is actually here. His name is Barry Meehan, and perhaps he might like to tell people a little more about what the fun season is all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Barry Meehan, if perhaps you would like to stand up and respond to that.
Thank you very much indeed, Barry Meehan, as Andrew said, from the Durban Fun Season, also from the Durban Community Tourism Organisation. The Fun Season has been fantastic to put together, in that Durban Tourism have come to the party in such a big way. It is amazing. And I'd like to thank Philip Satoli and his team for that, because they've all done a wonderful job. The only problem that I have with the Fun Season at the moment is that there are billboards all the way around Johannesburg, there are cinema ads, there's TV ads, there's brochures, booklets, etc. Everybody up country knows about the Fun Season. But our problem is going to be getting local Durbanites to buy into the Fun Season. Because an awful lot of people down in our beautiful city don't even know that the Fun Season is actually on. So we need to get every Durbanite behind Durban, which is not happening. If every person in the city became an ambassador for their city and talked the city up, instead of a lot of the talk that's going on at the moment, talking the city down, we would actually be the premier holiday resort in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We have time to take one more question from the floor.
John McKenna from the Tsokosan Group to say, to me, I recently, and I've been fortunate enough to run hotels and businesses in various parts of the world, but I have to say this, that we spoke of an enabling environment, and what has been magnificent is, besides the fun and the leisure side, has been the conferencing and exhibition side. And one of the most exciting aspects for me has been this partnership with certainly the city, with the ICC, with the Conference Bureau. And what has been magnificent to watch is how the world has reacted to this wonderful partnership. And we know that's where the battle is won or lost at the end of the day. The amount of conferences we've recently got, Route International, has been an absolute direct result of this enabling environment that myself and Olak spoke about. And I have no doubt, and we see a wonderful example here today, of this partnership with the government, local government, and private enterprise. And that, to me, is the most exciting thing. I so much look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all three of our guests who have asked questions. Perhaps if we can pick up to on the an issue raised by Barry Meehan regarding why locals aren't buying into the Durban story. Mansi, perhaps you can respond to that one.
I think before I answer the question, for me, one of the things that I think we're all talking nice stuff here, and I think I would like to mention three things. First, it's a challenge to colleagues in Durban. You know, I used to live here. I used to be responsible for marketing KwaZulu-Natal and working together with the city of Durban. The challenge that I'm asking all of us, it's not asking them, it's asking all of us, has Durban given up the slot or the opportunity that we once enjoyed of enjoying the lion's share of both international and domestic tourists. You know, I get bothered that it's almost like we've resigned ourselves to be a domestic, the number one domestic destination in South Africa. And looking at the product that we have and the good things that we're all saying here, you know, I think we need to fight up. Durban need to fight up to go back to that slot of being the number one, because you have the potential to do that. And I think the Africa is the destination. You know, let's not go fishing where everybody's going. You know, everybody's going to Germany, the traditional source market of South Africa. I think Durban need to pick up that tab to say, we are going to take that number one slot, because it used to be there. When they say South Africa, Durban is a place to go. For all these things that we've said, that's the one thing. I think the second thing is the issue that Barry was talking about Durbanites speaking Durban up. You know, and for us to be able to do that, I think we need, as you know, private sector and the public sector, to speak to our people, talk to Durbanites about tourism. You know, because we think a lot of time that people don't understand that they need to roll up their socks and roll out the red carpet when Indaba comes to town. But in fact, a lot of Durbanites actually takes offense when Durban comes in. They're like, here we go again. Walnut Street is going to be blocked off because these people are here. But it's these people that I think our people need to be taught to welcome. And you know, somebody talked about including the townships, Kwamashu, and what. They also have to be taught about tourism, the benefit of tourists, and also for them to be allowed to be tourists in their own city. So that when we talk all this great stuff, they say, well, I know what we're talking about. You know, I think that's the second thing that I really want to say. And really the last thing is in terms of there has to be continuity. I think this startup and going down, startup in terms of we are fixing infrastructure stuff, we're getting campaigns to get Durban out there, you know, has to continue. You know, we really should not, because once we get the people's attention and then we lose them up after a year because we've changed the leadership there, we've done whatever, that's one of the things that doesn't help us. So for me, with all these great things that Durban is doing, and I said earlier on, the fighting spirit of Durban and KwaZulu-Natal is what is fantastic, that is working for this destination. In reality, if you look at what South Africa has to offer, I'm from Limpopo originally, but have a look at what Durban has everything. You know, you have within 2 hours drive from here, you are in the highest mountain in this country. You know, which other, you show me a province in South Africa that has that. You have beautiful beachfront. You show me a province in South Africa that has this amount of space in terms of beachfront. You know, you have a look, there's a new airport where we built a world-class facility. Let's get this stuff working for us. And it starts with our own people. It starts with the partnership that we're talking about between business and the public sector. So that together, because the goal is one, the vision is one. Let's make sure it get going. Let the fight that we're having be behind in the boardroom. So when we go out there, we are one. And it's about moving Durban forward and KZN forward in South Africa.
Well, on that powerful note, perhaps, Sandra, if you get a response from you with a comment made from John regarding the increased private partnership as well as the collaboration that we're seeing here. It's evident on this panel. Is that something that's unique to Durban?
I think it is something which is working very well in Durban. I don't know whether it's unique to Durban, but certainly I think there is a united front. There is a concerted effort, certainly on the part of business in the province, to talk up the province. I think we've been quite hard on ourselves saying that everyone in Durban is down on the city. I think certainly if I look at Deloitte here in KZN, we're very committed to the city and to the province, and we do a lot to try and promote KZN as a business and a lifestyle and a tourism destination. But yeah, I mean, there are a significant number of public-private partnerships which are working very well. We talked earlier about the urban management zones, also the urban improvement precincts. So Umhlanga has one of those, which has had a fantastic impact on the Umhlanga beachfront and village and the boardwalk and promenade there. Belito has recently instituted a URP as well. So I think, you know, we can quote a number of instances where business and community and government are coming together to try and really up the package which Durban can offer, and I think that's working well.
And on that note of upping the package, one thing that my colleagues and I are from Johannesburg, as you can tell, so we're used to the traffic run, but also with the multi-purpose use of a stadium like Moses Mabhida. Yesterday afternoon we saw people bungee jumping, people coming for a jog, as well as restaurants. And Marcel, maybe that leads us to the question with regard to infrastructure, with the upgrades of the promenade. Quite clearly you need to make sure that these are multifaceted and multi-use environments that can have economic sustainability for the long term.
Yeah, they also need people that live in the city. One of the things that caused the decline of downtown Joburg was the amount of business that moved out, but your high-spending living population moved out. And Durban, I think, has caught that early enough. So the beachfront is full of not just tourists jogging in the morning, it's the people that live in Durban. And a lot of the developments that we're trying to put in place, for example, the Suncoast development with the mall attached and so on, is pulling that population back into the city. And the work that the city is doing they fixed the beachfront, they're now going backwards into the rest of the city. That infrastructure getting repaired, because when you've got if you think of your global tourist cities like Paris, like New York, they're full of people that live there and the tourists come. And Durban's got a plan to get that right. Cape Town got it right, but people forget that in early 2000, Cape Town had many buildings boarded up. It was a no-go zone in downtown Cape Town. It's completely forgotten now because downtown Cape Town is full of life in terms of tourism, living population, etc. And Durban's going that route, and you can see the benefits of that coming through already. Started at the beachfront, and they're working their way back in the city. And the part that we get comfort from is there is a coherent plan to actually get this in place. And I think it's going to be quite exciting. They're certainly putting the infrastructure in that's needed.
Indeed. Well, we will be looking forward to those developments. That does unfortunately bring the first half of this panel discussion to an end. Thank you so much to our guests, Marcel van Olok, Chief Executive of Tsogosan, Madzira Mawela, CEO of Tourism Business Council in South Africa, as well as the City Manager of Durban, Mr. Sibusitole. Andre Bottas, partner at Deloitte, will stay with us for the second half of our discussion. We're going to a short ad break, but we will return as we continue focusing or zoning in on Durban after the break. A warm welcome back to CNBC Africa. This special being broadcast to you live from the Moses Mabhida Stadium in the magical city of Durban, where we'll be unpacking the potential that this city has to attract not only those on the African continent, but also making it a global city. And to help us unpack that further is my panel. It has changed from the ad break, but Andre Bottas, a familiar face, he's a partner at Deloitte. We've got to his left there, Sadhna Naidu. He's the chairman of the board of the KZN Tourism, deputy city manager, Dr. Naledi Moyo, as well as Moses Tembe, KZN Growth Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us again. Only one rose again on the panel, so it does seem as though the female bias does not exist in KZN. We might change that soon. But to help us take a look, or rather move forward with regard to this discussion, the Durban Trade Port is a unique proposition for KZN. And last year, James Seymour, he's the CEO of Durban KZN Convention Bureau, he gave us more insight into this aerotropolis.
Durban Trade Port is a classic example of a facility that is beginning to succeed. As a result of the facilities that are being provided, Durban Trade Port now has a major zone, a hotel house zone where cut flowers are now being flown out on every evening to the markets of Amsterdam, and also producing various vegetable crops, tomatoes, cucumbers, which are being sent up to Johannesburg. So Durban is now becoming a major export market for various forms of agriculture. In addition to that, the industrial component of that aerotropolis is busy being rolled out. There's, for example, a major ball bearing facility that produces specialized ball bearings which are going to be exported to various parts of Africa.
Well, that was James Seymour there giving us an update on the Durban Trade Port and Aerotropolis. But Sadha, perhaps if we start off with you, this Aerotropolis perhaps does add another proposition yet to the quality that is Durban City. It almost seems as though you can increase trade via land, sea, and now via air.
Most definitely. Thank you very much. I think firstly, let me indicate that I think as a province, we identify and recognize that Durban is integral in our endeavors and our policies. In fact, from a tourism point of view, 80% of the tourists that do come into the province come via Durban. So for us, it's important that we align our strategies and policies with the cities. The Durban Trade Port, which is one of the entities of the provincial government, is central to that in terms of air connectivity. And the province and the government have a vision in terms of developing an aerotropolis over the next few years in the Durban Trade Port precinct. And that will give us an enhanced environment in terms of developing our tourism objectives.
Increasing tourism objectives, no doubt. Again, we do ask you to continue sending through your questions, your comments and suggestions via our Twitter handle. That's the Durban Experience without an E. But Moses, I'd like to come to you with regard to this KZN Growth Coalition. Certainly the Durban Trade Port is a benefit or something that your organization must keep an eye on for the moment.
The previous speakers alluded to the fact that there's been an excellent relationship between business and government stroke the municipality in terms of growing the economy of KZN and naturally of Durban. And the trade port plays a crucial role in that objective of growing the economy and the airport. Talking about tourism, we have been growing tourism by a tune of 10-12%, as you would know. If we could make our international airport a true international airport, not in name, we think that we could begin to talk about 20-25% year on year. Easy access of Africans and the world to Durban is crucial. You cannot fly direct from London to Durban. Many airlines can't fly direct from Nigeria, most parts of Africa to Durban. We've got to get that right.
And that does also call perhaps for the ease of movement or ease of business, that's where regulation comes in. Andre?
Yeah, I think the air connectivity is a complex issue for Durban. Clearly in modern aviation, the hub and spoke concept is what everybody talks about, and in South Africa, Johannesburg is our hub. So we need to have a look at how we work with that. You know, Johannesburg is a very hot and dry airport and high. So not easy for taking off and landing there. Use extra fuel doing it, and engines overheat. So certainly as a cargo airport, we'd like to see Durban picking up a greater share of the cargo, the air freight export. And that's an area we think Durban can really contribute, and the Durban Trade Port is ideally zoned for that. We see it being promulgated soon, SEZs, so special economic zones, which are now coming in, replacing the old IDZs. Durban would look to become the SEZ for KZN, and we're looking at significant manufacturing going in there in addition to the agri-zone, which we've talked about. So clearly there, the SEZ and the tax and the customs incentives that go with that is an example of regulation really aiding foreign investment into Durban, and an opportunity for the trade port to benefit from that. But I think in terms of routes, just the other issue I wanted to touch on there is the charter or package tour holiday concept, which you see a lot in Europe. So traditionally when Europeans go on holiday, certainly when I lived there for a couple of years, you'd go into the travel agent, you'd pick your 2-week package somewhere, they would fly you there on their own charter jet, transfer you to their own hotel, you'd spend your 2 weeks and you'd fly home again. And I think that's an opportunity for Durban to explore from a tourism concept. We really don't have that package tour concept, really integrating hotels and charter flights into Durban, at least while we look for regular international routes.
Well, from what we hear, that might be changing with SA Express, but we'll delve into that in a moment or two. Dr. Moyo, to bring you into this discussion, no doubt we're hearing that Durban needs to become an African metropolis. We're hearing from a business perspective, from a tourism perspective. Are we making gains with regard to that? And the reason why I brought up regulation is that you don't need a visa if you're traveling within the SADC region. So it does make things slightly easier with regard to regulation.
It's certainly true, Gugu. I think one of the areas that we need to look at, and I'm excited that there has been a phenomenal growth in aviation industry in Africa as a whole. For example, worldwide is expected to be 4.2, but in Africa is 4.9. And that's an opportunity which we must grab with both hands. And obviously, the Dube being the first African erythropolis, a greenfields erythropolis, not a brownfields, because worldwide we've seen that erythropolis are built on existing infrastructure. This one being the first erythropolis in a sensitive and ecological environment space has enabled Durban to be, I think, the leader in climate adaptation, in offsetting mitigation matters in environmental areas, but putting forward a clear agenda on sustainability that balances both development and environmental sustainability. And I think that in itself has got a lot of attraction with tourism. We're building green corridors, what we call eco corridors within that erythropolis. And that gives Durban a very unique proposition throughout the world of being able to develop within a sustainable agenda and resilience agenda. So we're very excited about it. And secondly, I think to pick up on what my colleagues are saying, in the world, a greenfields airport is built once after 50 years. And it was Hong Kong, the other one, then it's Durban. And incorporating the cargo side and the business link side has not just make it a unique proposition, but from a logistics point of view, it integrates with the SIP2, the Strategic Infrastructure Program of national government. So what we predict is that not only Durban will offer a better logistics proposition for the world and for Africa, it just gives Durban an edge on all front, on the business front, on investment side, on tourism side, on a lifestyle front. So all those propositions make Durban a very uniquely province in South Africa.
Indeed. Well, a magical province, one that with airlines making it more accessible to Africans on the rest of the continent with direct flights perhaps from Harare as well as Lusaka in Zambia. Let's just take a quick look at this insert as to what airlines are doing to make Durban more accessible.
We said in 2009 and 2010 that as KwaZulu-Natal we are going to employ an aggressive strategy that will take us to the many capitals of the countries in the region, but that will also see us employing a strategy of developing a route that will come to KwaZulu-Natal, to Durban and King Shaka International Airport in particular.
It translates the ideals of liberation of Africa and liberation of our region. The launch of this link between KwaZulu-Natal and Zimbabwe, and we as players of civil aviation, we totally agree and we encourage the open sky policies.
Since our route proving, which is the period prior to the launch, we've seen the route grow to be carrying an average of about 70% load factor, which is a very good load factor for us because as South African Express, once we hit about 75% load factor, that is occupancy, we add another frequency, or we grow the capacity by increasing the size of aircraft. So this is a very interesting route for us, and we are already looking to grow it.
The inauguration of this flight is part of our Africa expansion strategy, both at South African Express as well as South African Airways. We want to be able to take South Africans to every single country in Africa. We want to increase our cargo transportation using our airlines. We want to increase the transportation of South Africans, the passengers, to every African country and to be able to move Africans within the African continent for economic development and growth, which will increase skills development, which will increase job creation, and most particularly to increase regional integration in our continent.
Increasing regional integration. Sada, well, we saw the launch of the Durban-Harare route in that one. I understand that Lusaka has been added onto the list following others. Is that, could we see more potentially?
Yeah, thanks, Gugu. I think it's important to indicate firstly that the World Tourism Organization indicates that by 2020, you're going to get almost 2/3 of your tourists in the world using air travel as a mode of transport. And in that respect, air connectivity for us is central to our achieving our tourism objectives. As a province, we have engaged quite vigorously with SA Express. SA Express has now launched a direct route from Durban to Harare and to Lusaka. And they have in their plans to increase the number of routes into Africa by at least another 10 in the next 18 to 24 months. And for us, that is exciting, where we convert the King Shaka International Airport to an African hub. Now, in that respect, if you look at the growth of tourism in Africa itself, it's grown by almost 300% from 1990 to 2012. And we need to indicate how do we use that as a platform to achieve our objectives in the city and the province. City has an objective of increasing tourism from 3.8 million to 5 million by 2020. How do we use that? And one of the ways of doing that is to say, how do we use Africa as an emerging market whilst not forgetting our established markets in Europe and in Americas? How do we use the transit tourists that do come from America to Africa by using Durban as a transit via our international line that we have now to Dubai? Gugu, it's also important to mention in our efforts as a province, we have engaged and we were successful in bidding to host the World Routes. Now, the World Routes that takes place in Chicago this year, took place in Las Vegas last year, is an assembly of almost 300 of airline owners and operators. And we want to use that as our strategy to increase the number of airlines that can fly from King Shaka International Airport to the world, and in addressing our tourism growth and development.
Dr. Moyo nodding her head rather aggressively there, agreeing with you quite strongly. Quite clearly, you mentioned the city Chicago, Sada, so it does seem as though you're targeting your sister cities across the board first. Will that list also be expanding?
Yes, definitely. I think I always get excited. I don't know who quote, but it's one of the mayors in Africa, in America, that in one of the cities or states in America, who said that the 21st century is the century of the cities. So if the cities have all the necessary infrastructure for both tourism, investment, lifestyle, that's where the world is. The world is within the cities. So I'm very excited about the growth of that we are going to have all the airlines here. I think one of the areas that is growing very fast in Africa is the aviation industry. And I like that in our Retropolis, we did not look only at the growth of aviation for business, for leisure, for domestic and for tourism, but we also, in the 60 plan of the Retropolis, we've incorporated the maintenance, repairs and overhaul of aircrafts. So what does it mean? It means that as we push the strategy of targeting airlines and making this an African hub, aviation hub, we also will have the capability of attracting maintenance, repairs and overhaul, which is called MRO. You know, it means that from an investment and job creation perspective, this Aerotropolis will be able in the next 20 years to have over 8,000 aviation technicians trained in Durban doing the overhaul of and maintenance of aircraft in Durban. So when you look at the entire concept of Aerotropolis and targeting particularly airline business, Durban is poised. I think he has indicated that one of the things is that Johannesburg is a very hard landing strip, you know, the fuel is very costly and so forth. And the coastline landing and taking off is very cheap. You also burn the fuel very fast. So we're very excited that there's actually the puzzle is basically integrated in such a way that makes Durban the best business proposition for any business, for any tourist.
Dr. Moya, I think we have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we are slightly pressed for time, but no doubt the trade between South Africa and other African states is increasing. We also have the East 3 route, which is one that's very popular. We've got time for one question from the floor. Short and sharp. Anyone with a question? The gentleman over there.
My name is Akela Kumada from an organization called Enterprise 11. Question about Durban and its neighbors, because there's no point in growing infrastructure in Durban and you have your, especially the northern neighbors, not growing that fast, not getting into harmony, because the political boundaries that you have are not necessarily the economic boundaries. For example, Palito is not in Durban. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was Akele Kumete. Moses, perhaps we can pose this question to you. I know you focus on KZN growth potential, but are you observing our neighbors?
We certainly cannot afford as Durban to think that Durban is not in KZN. In fact, we, together with the city, have gone all out to ensure that KZN is put right at the center of tourism in terms of marketing Durban. As Mamatsi indicated earlier, if you look at the distance between Durban and the mountains, you're talking 2 hours. The distance between Durban and the game reserves, you're talking about Hluhluwe, Tanda, all of those areas are an hour or 2 away. We certainly are positioning Durban in the context of all of those assets.
Indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we do have to wrap it up here for today. Thank you so much to our panelists, Moses Tembe, who is from KZN Growth Coalition, Dr. Naledi Moyo, who is a Deputy City Manager, Sada Naidu, Chairman of the Board of KZN Tourism, as well as Andre Potas, Partner, Corporate Finance Advisory Leader, and Infrastructure and Capital Projects Facilitator at Deloitte. Well, this does bring our CNBC Africa special to an end. Thank you so much for our audience as well for participating and being on their best behavior this morning. From myself, Kukule Tumpupi for CNBC Africa, that's a wrap. Keep talking Durban up. That's it.